Hello, everybody. Welcome to Women's Wrestling Focus, brought to you by SEScoops and hosted by me, Ella J of a Wrestling Gal podcast. Now, today we are on the brink of one of WWE's big four pay-per-views, Survivor Series weekend, coming up this Sunday, November 21st, with two women's matches on the card, with, of course, the traditional Raw versus SmackDown 5-on-5 elimination match. But we also have a very enticing Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch taking on SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair, and also right around the corner, we have NXT WarGames coming up on December 5th, and if last night on NXT 2.0 is any indication, this Women's WarGames match is going to be absolutely brutal. So without further ado, let's get on to some predictions for the women's matches in terms of Survivor Series and NXT WarGames. Now, firstly, Survivor Series. Survivor Series is coming up this Sunday on November 21st on Peacock and, of course, the WWE Network if you are international. And so we have two women's matches on the card that I am highly looking forward to. Perhaps the biggest match, I think, that a lot of people have question marks, at least in terms of the unpredictability of the outcome, is the Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch versus the SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair. Now, these two have definitely gone at it the last few weeks, especially after this interesting title swap they had post WWE draft that went down on SmackDown a few weeks ago. So Charlotte Flair traded her Raw Women's Championship for the SmackDown Women's Championship, and vice versa. Becky Lynch, who was the SmackDown Women's Champion, is now the Raw Women's Champion. And so these two have definitely a historied rivalry, definitely no love lost here in terms of on screen. These two have been fierce competitors. These two came to the main roster as friends as a part of Team PCB back in 2015, and were teaming a lot in their first few years on the main roster. Of course, they did have that triple threat match at WrestleMania a few years ago with Sasha Banks and, of course, Ronda Rousey. But really, I think it all culminated and things really changed in the summer of 2018, where Becky Lynch at SummerSlam, after Charlotte Flair had become the new SmackDown Women's Champion, Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair shared a moment of friendship and sportsmanship until, Becky Lynch clocked Charlotte Flair in the face. And so this really started this rivalry, and of course they met at WWE's first ever all-women's pay-per-view Evolution and really have become foes ever since then. And now they are on separate brands, yes, but in the tradition of Survivor Series, you normally have each women's champion from each respective brand, Raw and SmackDown, going at it. So a lot of fans are really, really excited to see this rivalry rekindled, even if it's just a one-off, as they are on separate brands. But definitely, this match is the one that I honestly have the biggest question mark around for the entire pay-per-view. Of course, I see Team Raw taking all of it in the end. However, both of these ladies have been fairly protected, I think, since winning championships. Becky Lynch obviously returned at SummerSlam and defeated Bianca Belair, and now is the Raw Women's Champion after trading her SmackDown Women's Championship. And of course, Charlotte Flair has also been a champion since SummerSlam. And so, of course, this one is really unpredictable because you have two of arguably the top women in WWE going at it in I think a match highly anticipated by a lot of people. However, I really can't see a case for either of them losing or going over cleanly. And so for that reason, I think we're going to have a little bit of a weird match ending for this one to kind of leave a cliffhanger and really maybe an uncertain match result, possibly a draw. And by that, I mean, there's a lot of possible ways it could be a draw. It could be a double disqualification, a double countout, a no contest. There's a lot of things that could happen. There has been no stipulation added outside of champion versus champion, of course. And so I think this might end in a double countout, to be fair. Either that or going with the theme of me thinking that Raw is going to ultimately take it home. Becky Lynch could win, but again, I don't see her defeating Charlotte Flair cleanly, much like I don't see Charlotte Flair defeating Becky Lynch cleanly. It's possible that Alexa Bliss could have some say in this matchup and maybe cost Charlotte Flair the match, as they kind of have some unresolved issues from their match at Extreme Rules against Charlotte Flair. So there's a lot of things that could happen in the world of this matchup. However, like I said, I don't think we're going to have a clean finish here. Possibly a double countout. Perhaps this rivalry will be rejuvenated and rekindled, and Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch will lose all control and basically just go on a rampage outside of the ring, and maybe that would then result in the double countout. I think there's definitely some frustrations going into this matchup, and so for that reason, I can definitely see the action ensuing outside of the ring, like I said, possibly resulting in a double countout. But what do you think? Do you see Becky Lynch defeating Charlotte Flair? Do you see Charlotte Flair defeating Becky Lynch? Or do you see this maybe going over as a draw? A lot of things could happen. My gut says something like a double countout or no contest. I don't really know how exactly this match is going to end, but I'm pretty confident in saying that neither opponent will win cleanly without at least some interference or some outside or some foreign object being involved here. So we'll see what happens. But in the case of a clean winner, maybe Becky Lynch. If we're going to get a decisive victor, Becky Lynch. But if not, in the grand scheme of things, I think this one might be a unfortunate double countout. But nevertheless, it's definitely going to be a great match. These two are two of the top female athletes ever in the history of WWE. And so the action is definitely going to deliver in this matchup. And I'm sure it's going to be entertaining as heck, and definitely a lot of brutal and personal rivalry and story built into this. So I'm personally very excited for it, and it's cool that it's unpredictable, the ending. I could see it going either way, or possibly a draw, but we'll see what happens. But also on the Survivor Series card, we obviously have the traditional 5 versus 5 Raw versus SmackDown elimination style match. Now, things have already kind of shooken up between who is participating in this matchup, because originally announced for SmackDown, we had Aaliyah on the team, but unfortunately Sonya Deville informed Aaliyah last week that she will no longer be on the SmackDown Women's Survivor Series team, so that leaves one spot vacated, which we will probably likely find out this Friday on SmackDown. But for now, the rest of the team for SmackDown stands as the Boss, Sasha Banks, Shayna Baszler, Natalya, and Shotzi. And this team itself is a great crop of women, I must say. But obviously going in for both teams, there's a lot of animosity internally between the teams. It's no surprise here that it's probably going to be no shocker here that there's definitely going to be some tension brewing between Sasha Banks and Shotzi, as they have gone at it the last few weeks, as Shotzi is now portraying a heel character. And so that is definitely going to play a big part into this matchup, I feel, maybe resulting in an early elimination. Maybe Sasha and Shotzi get at it on the ring apron, and then somebody surprised Sasha from Team Raw, surprising Sasha with a surprise roll-up and thus eliminating Sasha. I can see one of them going out early because their rivalry will get the better of them. But, I mean, Raw does have its problems as well. Obviously, on Team Raw, though, you have Bianca Belair, a former SmackDown Women's Champion. You have Rhea Ripley, who is one half of the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. You do not have Nikki ASH for some reason, but that's a whole other conversation. But you do also have the number one contender for the Raw Women's Championship, Liv Morgan. And of course, you have the most beautiful woman in all of WWE, Carmella, and of course, Queen Zelina. And now, Queen Zelina and Carmella have been teaming together, so they will likely be getting along. However, they have been feuding with Rhea Ripley and Nikki ASH in the hunt for the Women's Tag Team Championships. So again, you have some internal team struggle there between Rhea Ripley and Carmella and Queen Zelina. I don't know how much of a factor that will have in play, but definitely when you're in the hunt for gold, you kind of want to make a statement, but you also kind of have to, as WWE likes to say, coexist on a team where there's a lot of animosity between both teams. And so I think definitely that's going to be coming into play. And of course, I mean, Liv Morgan also has a little bit of a history with Carmella and Zelina Vega as well during their times on SmackDown. And so I think that could possibly play a factor into this matchup, as well as obviously Carmella and Liv Morgan went head-to-head on the pre-show of Extreme Rules in September. And so both teams, needless to say, definitely have their own crop of issues going on here internally. And can they coexist is the question looming on everybody's mind right now, as WWE likes to remind us. But, I mean, I really see this, again, Team Raw kind of taking this one home. Again, Team SmackDown, you do have that one spot open. Perhaps a lot of people have been saying Asuka, as Asuka went undrafted in the WWE draft, and so we don't know what brand she's going to be on. Some people have been saying Bayley, but the last I think I heard, Bayley was supposed to be out 6 to 9 months, and it's only been about 3 months, if I'm correct, since she got her knee injured. And so I think Asuka is a more likely fit or suitable replacement for Team SmackDown. But in the end, I can see Team Raw going home. I think maybe to further fuel Liv Morgan in her hunt for the Raw Women's Championship and not letting her lose momentum, Liv Morgan should be one of the sole survivors. And ironically, if I recall correctly, the two people that I'm predicting to be the sole survivors for this year were actually the last two on Team SmackDown of last year at the end, before Lana was the sole survivor. So last year, if I'm recalling correctly, Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair were the last two for their team on Team SmackDown. And unfortunately, they came up short. But this year, I think Liv Morgan is going to continue her momentum. She had that great moment on Monday Night Raw where she held up the Raw Women's Championship. But also, Bianca Belair has definitely been holding down the fort for both brands this year, especially while rotating with a rotation of injuries and absences and hiatuses. Bianca Belair has definitely been the most consistent and steady woman going in WWE. And so I think she's definitely had an incredible year. And so Bianca Belair and Liv Morgan, I predict as the sole survivors in this 5-on-5 Survivor Series match. Now, I don't know the exact sequence of eliminations. Like I said, I think Sasha and Shotzi are definitely going to be getting into it earlier in the match and possibly resulting in an early elimination from one of them. But nevertheless, I'm trying to think of who could be the last remaining member for SmackDown. Maybe Asuka. I think if Sasha is going to be eliminated early in like a shocking fashion, I think maybe the biggest name left on that team then would be Asuka. And so it would be cool to see Asuka go at it at the end there and kind of give up this valiant effort fight. But maybe that 2-on-1 situation was too much to overcome. We'll see what happens. But I think you got to keep Liv Morgan strong going into her match against Becky Lynch sometime down the line. And I mean, Bianca Belair has been holding down the fort and is such a powerhouse. And so what better way to really rise her stock up even more than have her be one of the sole survivors this year at Survivor Series. So Team Raw, in my book, is taking home the victory here on Survivor Series, for the women anyways. So let me know, too. Let me know, what are some of your predictions? Obviously, there's a lot of animosity brewing between both teams, and the big question is, can they coexist? They're going to have to if they want to secure a victory, but definitely we're going to be seeing some power struggles going on in this matchup. That's for sure. That's going to be no surprise. That's just how every Survivor Series is. But let me know down below, who is your prediction for the winner of this matchup, and who do you predict as the sole survivors? And perhaps, who do you think is going to be the last woman on Team SmackDown? I'm sure we'll find out this Friday on SmackDown, as again, the spot has been vacated by Aaliyah since she was informed by Sonya Deville that she will no longer be on the team, and so that leaves one spot open. Could it be Asuka? Could it be maybe another surprise? Could it be an NXT call-up? I don't know yet. Could it be maybe another person on SmackDown like Naomi or Xia Li or Toni Storm even? Toni Storm seems to be going in the hunt, though, against Charlotte Flair, though. But we'll see what happens. And, I mean, we also have WarGames coming up in a couple weeks on December 5th. And last night on NXT 2.0, we got a little taste of what is going to be headed our way for WarGames coming up. It seems to be confirmed so far, at least some of the competitors in the WarGames match. It seems as though the teams have definitely drawn a line in the sand. Obviously, Dakota Kai Obviously, Dakota Kai was saved last night after trying to go after Raquel Gonzalez by Toxic Attraction. Toxic Attraction, which is Mandy Rose, JC Jane, and Gigi Dolan. The NXT Women's Champion and the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions came to the aid of this newly heelish, crazy Dakota Kai coming to her aid. And of course, Raquel Gonzalez was then saved by Cora Jade and then by Io Shirai as Zoe Stark offered up Io Shirai her crutch. And so Io Shirai boldly proclaimed WarGames. And so it looks like we will be having maybe this 4-on-4 dynamic coming up. The WarGames is always so exciting, but it's interesting though because nobody really knows the status of Zoe Stark. Obviously, she came out on crutches last night, and the question is, will she be cleared before this? But assuming she's not, trying to think of who could possibly fill that 4th spot. Trying to think of baby faces right now on NXT. It's really hard because we've seen people go in and out. I don't really know who. Maybe Saray. Saray, I think, would be a cool one. Saray has kind of low-key been feuding with Toxic Attraction since they first arrived. So I think Saray would be a good addition to the team of Raquel, Cora Jade, and Io Shirai. That's definitely a team I would be well invested in. And of course, on the flip sides of things, you have Dakota Kai and of course Toxic Attraction, JC Jane, Mandy Rose, and Gigi Dolan. And it should be noted that Dakota Kai is still undefeated in WarGames. She is 2-0. She is tied for the best record, tied with Candice LeRae. And obviously, Candice LeRae is out on pregnancy leave. And so, can Dakota Kai go 3-0 at WarGames? To be determined. I'm so excited for this. This is obviously just the first steps going into this amazing pay-per-view. And of course, it's going to be all-out war. If last year was any proof, with Io Shirai launching herself off of the top of the steel cage in a steel trash can, I think that is definitely indicative of cool things to come this year. All out carnage. And WarGames is always one of the most highly anticipated pay-per-views for me, at least. And so this really seems to be the beginning of really this cool rivalry building up to WarGames. So I am so excited for this. I don't really know who's going to be winning here, but maybe Saray could be the last woman on the team. Maybe I really want Dakota Kai to be 3-0. And maybe, you have the cohesive team of Toxic Attraction, but Raquel and Io have that rivalry built in, as Io got beaten by Raquel at NXT TakeOver Stand and Deliver, so can that team coexist? Last year Raquel did pin Io Shirai for her team to win last year at WarGames, so there's always that history to play a factor. But for right now, an early prediction, Dakota Kai and Toxic Attraction maybe walking away as the winners. That's just an early prediction. Things could change, like I said. Zoe Stark could be cleared ahead of this. We could get a completely rotation of people. They could take opponents out of this matchup for some reason last minute. We'll see what happens. But an early prediction, Dakota Kai will go 3-0 at WarGames this year for her team. So we'll see what happens. But again, so much fun action coming up in the WWE world, with obviously Survivor Series coming up this weekend. 2 highly anticipated women's matchups that are really unpredictable. I don't know exactly how Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch is going to end, but let me know. Let me know down below, who do you think is going to be taking away that victory and sealing the deal to become the ultimate Battle of the Brands champion? And so we'll see what happens. And again, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited for this weekend coming up. And of course, let me know down below your predictions for Survivor Series, and of course, your early predictions for WarGames. We got a few more weeks of build-up before WarGames happens, but it's definitely going to be very exciting, very brutal, and definitely chaotic. And of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can be informed of more fun content here on SEScoops. And this is Ella J signing off.